Hello and welcome to the podcast. I am Ian Armstrong. Today we'll be talking about the atrocities portrayed by Japan in World War II. Now, this is basically going to be a cover of the story. I am in no ways a professional, but I did research and I'm going to do my best to convey the information to y'all at home. But I actually wanted to show a little backstory about how I found out about this in the first place. I was in 7th grade. It was around Halloween, and I was looking up ghost stories, to tell my friends and try to scare them as kids do. And I came across this one called the Malaysian Ghost Ship. Off the coast of Malaysia, there was this ship that was sending out an SOS signal. And all it read was, SOS, save our souls, please help. Everybody's dead. Crew is dead. Captain is dead. I think I am dead. There was a long pause, and then it cut off, and then it would play that. And now for 3 months, that message just played on repeat over and over and over again. And finally, an American ship finally managed to triangulate where it was off the coast of Malaysia. And when they got there, they went on board, and there was just bodies skewed everywhere in this agonizing, painful look, like the entire crew was just dead on deck. But there was no signs of struggle, there was no signs of break-in, there was no signs of robbery. Everything was in its proper place. There was no, skirmish or fighting or anything. It was just these men whose faces were just frozen in time and anguish and agony. And as you can imagine, it was pretty unsettling to look at. And so the American crew continues on looking, and they find the captain's quarters, and in it, the captain is still in his chair, just sitting there, screaming in eternal agony, unable to move, just frozen in time. And so they continue going on, and they find the communications room, and the communications guy is just sitting on the telegraph, just with his finger on the replay button, just screaming forever and ever, unable to move, unable to stop. And so, mortified, the crew continues further down below the deck, and they find just these barrels upon barrels of stuff. And they open one up, and it's just a powdery substance. They couldn't really determine what it was at the moment. And so the American crew decides to tow this to inland, and they can, figure out what's going on. So as soon as they get back on their ship, a plume of smoke starts rising out of the second deck, out of below deck. And all of a sudden, they hear just kind of this bang, and then the ship just sinks, unable to be found ever again. And there's a lot of theories about what was happening. But one of the most popular theories that I could find, that was kind of backed up a little bit because it was along the trade route, was that it was Japan shipping a type of iodine 37, up to Germany during the World War II times, and that this iodine 37 leaked and created a gaseous compound with the air and created a poison, and that slowly killed off the crew until they died. Wanted to see what the quote-unquote average American thought of Japan during World War II, see what their thoughts on the subject. And so I kind of went around and tried to get a fairly good demographic. I asked my grandma, Liz Coker. She was the oldest. I asked both my sister and my cousin. My sister is Zoe Armstrong. My cousin is Sean Coker. Both are in college, like I am, and I figured that they would be most up to date with it, so I wanted to get their opinions on it. And then I got my uncle, both my uncles actually, Charles Coker and Michael Coker. And so I wanted to get a vague demographic going on to see what the average American thought, and so these were their answers to what Japan was going through in World War II.
When December 7th, Pearl Harbor?
To be honest, I don't know. I know when Pearl Harbor happened then.
Well, they're part of the axis of evil. Right? Yeah, they're partners with those bad guys.
Yeah?
Yeah. They're trying to take over America. They attacked Pearl Harbor.
They invaded both China, and then they tried to attack the U.S. in Pearl Harbor. And that opened up this Pacific front of World War II.
Japan. Well, Japan invaded China, which is a bad deal. They were sided with the axis of evil, Italy and Germany, and eventually the big war in the Pacific, and eventually to take over Japan. Fought the Battle of the Pacific, leapfrogging, and big battle of Iwo Jima, which allowed the bombers to fly, and Doolittle flew the mission. They bombed Nagasaki first, and then Hiroshima, and eventually they were surrendered to MacArthur.
Soon after Japan invaded China, they set up shop and they put together a Surgeon General whose name was, and he was really interested in the biochemical warfare aspect, and that is why Japan had him set up shop there and test chemical weapons. And he did a bunch of field testing as well as in-house testing. He was in charge of Unit 731, the official biological warfare weapon of Japan. It was perpetrated by the quote-unquote secret government that Japan had going on during World War II. And they basically were in almost Auschwitz, based in China. They did a lot of human experimentation. They would simulate strokes in humans, give them heart attacks, do live amputations, lobotomies. They would scalp them and open up their skull while they were still alive. But he didn't just stop there. He also wanted to test the biochemical weapons of it. And so what he would do is he would put like anthrax, the bubonic plague, and so many other different diseases into like the gunpowder of guns, explosives, and other weaponry that Japan was using in the fights in China. And so when they would go there, the soldiers would be exposed to it, and he would study how it would affect them along with the wounds. But he would also go to Chinese cities and just release chemicals and plagues and just see how the Commonwealth would react to these chemicals. In-house, Unit 731 killed 3,000 people. They killed about 631 people per year over the course of 5 years, 3,000. But in the field projects, they killed tens of thousands. They actually don't have a number for it. But when the war was ending, after this 5-year program was ending, the Surgeon General ordered that the facility be burned to the ground, and they dug out these mass graves, and they were just tossing bodies in there over and over again. So basically you had like these mass graves and this cover-up going on in China perpetrated by Japan. And so when America found out about this, they were livid about the atrocities and war crimes that Japan created. But Japan cut them a deal. They said that their research was too invaluable to be lost to humanity because of a few questionable decisions. And America bought it. They took the Surgeon General and Japan's research back to America and agreed to not discuss it. Russia, of course, was livid because Japan even took a few of Russian citizens and prisoners of war and tested on them and killed them. But America defended Japan, saying that the information was too invaluable and that they couldn't just be lost. And so they took the Surgeon General, set him up north in America, and let him continue his research in a more humane approach. But still, the fact that Japan basically got away with it scot-free. And thank you. I just want to say thank you to the Telegraph.uk for writing an article that I was allowed to read. I also just wanted to say thank you to my family for allowing me to interview them and take up their time. I also wanted to thank Spotify for allowing me to use their music.